Hello and welcome everybody to my Modern Horizons 3 cEDH card review. Now, with a special set like this, we are getting many interesting additions to our Modern. You could also say there's just not Modern that is getting a little spicy, so let's just jump right in, because this set is filled with power, awesome cards, cool callbacks and references, and a ton of cardboard goodness. All of this makes sense because these Modern Horizons also bring us a series of free spells. In a way, and Modern Horizons 3 has the Flare cycle. Now, they do feel a little bit watered down compared to what came before, and that is the reason we're only going to look at 2 out of the 5 free-ish spells. Now, these flares are mechanically unique instant spells because instead of exiling a card from your hand, you have to sacrifice a non-token creature in the corresponding colors, such as Flare of Denial, which is counterspell if you sacrifice a blue creature, and Flare of Duplication, which copies target instant and or sorcery, and you may choose new targets. As far as cEDH is concerned, and with many decks playing a little amount of creatures, and especially some of them you don't even want to get rid of, we have to look at these from the commander perspective. Do you have access to a cheap commander like, let's say, Thrasios or Rograg, who already wants to be sacrificed, for example? Now, as cool as free spells are, not all decks want to sacrifice their creatures. Well, most, but that is the point. You do not always have a guarantee you have this or that creature except for your commander. I do not mind sacrificing my Thrasios to my Telesh because it's a card draw and I want to win with Thrasios infinite mana already, and Rograg is similar. Expensive commanders and or other commanders might actually avoid these spells in favor to the many menagerie of spells we already have. And that is okay. It's just nice to have options. If I were play to win, I guess these will be rated around 3, maybe 3.5. So if I'm correct, consider this a shout out to them. Next on the menu is Konian Nightmare, Konian Nightmare, a cool callback to a card that is actually banned in our format, and that is Recurring Nightmare. So Konian Nightmare is an enchantment for 1 and a black that says, when it enters the battlefield you get free energy. Yes, Modern Horizons 3 has a strong energy theme going on this year. Pay X energy, sacrifice a creature, return Konian Nightmare to its owner's hand, return target creature card with mana value X from your graveyard to the battlefield, activate only as a sorcery. Like Recurring Nightmare, one of the costs is actually to return this enchantment to your hand, you sack a creature, and now you also have to pay energy. With that ETB trigger of adding energy is how actually they balanced it away from Recurring Nightmare. If you're not sure why it's so strong, think of it this way. You cast Nightmare, no response, it enters the field. There is no point for an opponent to regain priority and destroy the enchantment before you put a target to reanimate, since the enchantment will be in your hand per the cost. Konian Nightmare works similarly, except that you get the ETB, which people can react to, and also you need to pay energy, which limits some of the reanimation targets. But you know what is cool? If you get this enchantment, cheap creature and Dockside, you can still go basically infinite if no one responds, so balance to the more, yes. Still busted? Hell yeah, we love it. I also do respect Recurring Nightmare a little more since I participate in more dual EDH these days. Like, as I'm recording this, I am preparing for a tournament and my Reanimator deck does run Nightmare, so good times. But let's get back to the topic because the review must go on. Speaking of references, Volatile Stormdrake is a free 2 Drake for 1 and a blue with Flying, Hexproof from activated and triggered abilities. When Volatile Stormdrake enters the battlefield, exchange control of Volatile Stormdrake and target creature an opponent controls. If you do, you get 4 energy, then sacrifice the creature unless you pay an amount of energy equal to its mana value. Now, yes, this is in reference to Gilded Drake, and obviously that energy something is here too, but it actually has a cool upside. Once you steal a creature, you can actually not pay, last I checked, the energy, and get it to be sacrificed, so kill that annoying stacks piece that is stopping you from winning. If there are no creatures on the field, you obviously just get a free 2 flyer, which, let's face it, might come up, but most likely won't. But yes, basically cast a cheap creature, gain a stacks piece, and remove it. If you are comboing off, it does not matter that you gave your opponent a flying beatstick. Necrodominance is a legendary enchantment for triple black with skip your draw step. At the beginning of your end step, you may pay any amount of life. If you do, draw that many cards. Your maximum hand size is 5. If a card or token will be put into your graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. Yes, this is worse than OG Necro that many decks still play and does not go around Bowmaster or Graveyard Shenanigans, since there is no trigger to respond to. It's however great in some turbo decks like Rock Silas, I guess, that can run Born Upon a Wind. You do not always have to go for a breach line there and can win at end step instead of taking an extra turn. I know that is a tall order, but Turbo Boys will find a way. I, for example, have had terrible luck with Necropotence, and I guess Necrodominance will not convince me that easily to try again. Next on the list is Ral, Monsoon Mage, a legendary human wizard for 1 and a red with instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Whenever you cast an instant sorcery spell during your turn, flip a coin. If you lose the flip, Ral Monsoon Mage deals 1 damage to you. If you win the flip, you may exile Ral. If you do, return to the battlefield transformed under his owner's control. And on the flip side, we get Ral Leyline Prodigy, a Planeswalker, or you could say Flipwalker. Ral Leyline Prodigy enters the battlefield with an additional loyalty counter on him for each instant and sorcery spell you've cast this turn. +1. Until your next turn, instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. -2. Ral deals 2 damage divided as you choose among 1 or 2 targets. Draw a card if you control a blue permanent other than Ral. -8. Exile the top 8 cards of your library. You may cast instant and sorcery spells from among them this turn without paying their mana cost. Whew, now that is a mouthful. Krakashima and Coin Flip Flans eat your heart out. Like those decks needed way more ways to storm off, right? This, however, can be very clean and flipped easily without mana and ultimate at the same turn. I think this will make a ton of those storm decks even faster and more potent. The front side already makes your cheap spells cheaper, and maybe the little damage you take from it won't add up as much, and as the flip is a May, you can always use it when the time is right. A solid storm entry that may be a huge upgrade, replacing Electromancers and so on and so forth. One thing I did forget to mention earlier with Krark, you can always sacrifice your character Flare Duplication to not flip coins. The next card I want to highlight is one of my favorites from the set and a personal chase, and that is 6. A legendary treefall for 2 and a green with reach, and whenever 6 attacks, mill 3 cards, you may put a land card from among them into your hand. As long as it's your turn, non-land permanent cards in your graveyard have retrace. And if you are unsure what retrace is, you may cast permanent cards from your graveyard by discarding a land card in addition to paying their cost. Yes, this is the half of Ren and 6, before Ren entered 6. And I do love how this not only enables interesting piles when doing intuition without white, but it's also just great in sacrifice decks like Korvecdal. Even remember the Nightmare I mentioned earlier? And this, and Korvecdal. Now, well, Korvecdal is eating well today, and many other decks too. The attack to mill 3 is decent enough in other styles of decks, and with, let's say, Life from the Loam, you can always refuel. This may just be absolutely my favorite card from the set, and I must have it. I must! We all love triggers, so why not add more with Power Balance? An enchantment for red with whenever an opponent casts a spell, you may reveal the top card of your library. If you do, you may cast the card without paying its mana cost if the 2 spells have the same mana value. So yes, this is more of a fun counterbalance. Just like with that, you adjust your top deck with Sensei, but instead of taking the fun out of the game, you can go crazy with some top deck casting shenanigans. Unless there's a Drannith in play, in which case no one is having a good time. Eladamri Korvecdal, Korvecdal is a legendary elf warrior 3/3 for 1 green. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may cast creature spells from the top of your library, green, and tap it. Tap 2 untapped creatures you control, reveal a card from your hand or the top card of your library. If you reveal a creature card this way, put it onto the battlefield. Activate only during your turn. So, Elf Ball having a new toy to play with? I did talk about it in my own group before, and with mono green storm decks, many of its commanders are interchangeable among each other without making much of a adjustment to the deck, and this shall join the ranks. It's great in the 99 and it's great as a commander. It can also be cast off of Jewel Lotus, and mana untapped shenanigans is just what green does best. Plus now you can have an Eladamri deck that is actually legal. Now let's look upon a card that I think will see the most play, and that is Strix Serenade. An instant for blue with counter target artifact, creature, or planeswalker spell. Its controller creates a 2/2 bluebird creature token with flying. Say goodbye to your commanders and wondering if we got table police here. In my humble opinion, this replaces Stern Scolding, since this can still hit the dock side, but it can also hit something much more earlier or later, depending on the potency of the play. It's also an ode to the lovely Swan Song, and that is neat. I do not generally like giving my opponent stuff, and that is the reason why I do not play an offer you can't refuse, but this is great. You want to cast your huge commander early, like me with my Tevesh or Crom, or Tivit? Well, if you see one blue mana open by your opponents, you may just start to sweat and pray. Guess making your things uncountable will be more and more in favor. Now let's move on from a card that will see a lot of play to the one that will probably see only play in one deck, mine. And that is Emperor of Bones, a 2/2 skeleton noble for 1 and a black with, at the beginning of combat on your turn, exile up to one target card from a graveyard. 1 and a black, adapt 2. Whenever one or more +1/+1 counters are put on Emperor of Bones, put a creature card exiled with Emperor of Bones onto the battlefield under your control with a finality counter on it. It gains haste. Sacrifice at the beginning of end step. Finality means if it would die or get exiled, it just gets exiled. Now before you go rushing, yes, adapt in definition means if it does not have a +1/+1 counter, put 1 or in this case 2 on it. But Rafine do not care. She puts on counters, and this can not only snipe creatures but can also be used for some fun shenanigans to increase my Doomsday Queen's attack triggers. I just find it great. Incidental removal is also great from graveyards. Yes, it's been some time since I did play my Rafine deck, and I do plan on bringing it back at some point. I just cannot promise anything right now. But you can keep encouraging it with your engagement and comments. Let us return to Korvecdal for a second with the next card on my list, Shifting Woodland, which is, well, a land. Shifting Woodland enters the battlefield tapped unless you control a forest, it adds 1 green, and it has Delirium 2 green. Shifting Woodlands becomes a copy of target permanent card in your graveyard until the end of turn. Activate only if there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard. Delirium, easy. It can tap itself to its ability, cool. You want to copy your own Breach, Omniscience, any of the cool stuff laying in the graveyard with that is a permanent? This land has got your back. The shenanigans with this, well, are hilarious. And I did say Korvecdal is eating great this season, along with many other decks, but wow, still a fun land. And now, let's read one of the most busted cards I believe to come out from this set in a long time. Nadu, Winged Wisdom, is a legendary bird wizard for 1 and a green and a blue with flying, and creatures you control have. Whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land card, put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, put it into your hand. This ability triggers only twice each turn. First, that ability twice each turn is never a hindrance for us. Second, yes, it's all creatures you control, not just it. And thirdly, here are your fun cards for your deck. Reeves, Displacer Kitten, Shuko. By the way, you should get Shuko in Europe because it's way cheaper here than in the US. I mean, yes, this bird is nuts. I do want to try it in the 99 of my Mothman dual deck, but damn, can this be a commander that can go nuts. My own personal track record with Simic is not too great, but I am sure there are many a brewer out there already fiddling with this insane card. Its restriction is not even much of a restriction even. I love it. Let's move away from the main set for just a minute and look at the cards that are coming in the Commander product of this set. Yes, Modern Horizons 3 has Commander decks too. Koram the Undertaker, a legendary human warrior for 1 and black, a red and a green, so Junt and 1, with Koram the Undertaker gets +X/+0, where X is the greatest power among creature cards in all graveyards. Whenever Koram attacks, each player mills a card. During each of your turns, you may play a land and cast a spell from among cards in graveyards that were put there from libraries this turn. The first 2 lines do not really matter as much as the final one, since this one does not care about milling. Actually, Hermit Druid is back on the menu. So yes, this is a Junt Reanimator deck, and here you can play the fun Necrotic Ooze Kiki combo I like so much, by just milling your deck out. Wish the mill was also on ETB, not just attack, because then you could just play Food Chain with this, but alas, we cannot have it all, most of the time. I do know it's early, but I'm already considering playing this in this year's Halloween special. But I cannot make a promise just yet, there are many a great commander still to come. But I'm thinking about it. Next we are going to look at an interesting card, Talon Gates of Madara, a gate land with when Talon Gates of Madara enters the battlefield, up to 1 target creature phases out. It taps for colorless or filters into color mana, but also for 4 mana you can put Talon Gates of Madara from your hand onto the battlefield. So in a way it is similar removal to Otawara, just much worse. It costs 4 colorless, Otawara can cost way less. It's an ability that is hard to interact with and can phase out that one annoying creature stopping you, instead of, anything else. Reads great. Or is it? I think maybe some low color decks, like 1 or 2 colors, might run this. It being a colorless mana producer does not help it that much, and yes, it's great with crop rotation, but if you're already running crop rod, you are running Cradle, so usually that will help you win. The channel lands from Neon Dynasty are still just better in my humble opinion. And that brings us to the end of the review for Modern Horizons 3 for cEDH. Remember to hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed this content, and maybe consider joining my Patreon. In any case, if I did miss a card or you have other cards on your list or would like to discuss this topic further, the comment section below is a great place to begin. And as always, my name is Def, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all behind the veil.